I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor.
Senator Elissa Slotkin presses Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on one of the most sensitive questions in American democracy, the domestic use of the U.S. military. Citing the unprecedented deployment of troops to Los Angeles without a governor's consent, Slotkin challenges whether the administration is eroding constitutional limits, politicizing the armed forces, and blurring the line between military power and civilian law enforcement.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I said in your hearing, when you had your confirmation hearing, that my biggest concern with you at the helm was the potential use of the military in ways that contradict the Constitution or that taint what I hope we all want, which is an apolitical military. And when I asked you about whether you would accept an order that was actually given to your predecessor, Secretary Esper, Trump's SecDef, to deploy active duty troops against unarmed protesters and to, in Secretary Esper's words, shoot at them, shoot at their legs. You said this was all theoretical. Here we are, a few months later, you've deployed 4,700 troops to Los Angeles and against the wishes of the governor. And my colleague across the aisle was right. It is the first time since 1965 that we have deployed guard troops without the permission of the governor. In all the instances he laid out, the president had sent in the military to protect protesters, not against the protesters. So you may dismiss it, but I feel like this is a fundamental issue of American democracy. If you love your country and you want an apolitical military, then it should be the last resort, not the first resort in our country to use them. So to get to the non-theoretical, have you authorized the uniformed military to detain or arrest protesters in Los Angeles?
Senator, I would just start by saying you're not a protester if you're throwing concrete
100%.
at
Arrest
law
those
enforcement
people,
officers.
throw them in the jail, 100%. But what you're doing is something different. Everyone knows this is a political decision, right? So we don't trust that you're using the best interests of the military, certainly, and of democracy on top of that. So have you given the order? That's all I want to know. It's not theoretical. For the U.S. military, not law enforcement. They can arrest all day long. That's their job. Do they have the ability, the uniformed military, to arrest and detain protesters currently today? It's a yes or no thing, authority.
It's sort of amusing the extent to which the speculation is out there. These troops are given very clear orders.
Then what is the order? Then list it out for us. Be a man, list it out. Did you authorize them to detain or arrest? That is a fundamental issue of democracy. I'm not trying to be a snot here. I'm just trying to get the actual, did you authorize them to do that?
All of these orders and what they're sent there to do are public.
Okay, so say it. So say it. Yes or no?
I'd like to.
Please, yes or no?
As I've said time and time again through interruption, they're there to protect law enforcement,
do they have
ICE
the ability
officers
to arrest?
who are trying to do their job, deporting illegals who were allowed in by the previous administration.
So they cannot arrest and detain citizens of the United States, the uniformed military.
As we've stated, if necessary, in their own self-defense, they could temporarily detain and hand over to ICE. But there's no arresting going on. And you know this better than you're trying to play political games. There's no arrest of U.S. personnel.
Of the U.S. military against members of the protest. Have you authorized U.S. military cyber tools to investigate people participating in these protests? Yes or no?
Certainly in no way that I'd be aware of.
Okay, that's good. I love that answer. That's great. Have you given the order to be able to shoot at unarmed protesters in any way? I'm just asking the question. Don't laugh. Like the whole country. And by the way, my colleagues across the aisle.
What is that based on? What evidence would you have that an order like that has ever been given?
Giving that order to your predecessor, to a Republican Secretary of Defense, who I give a lot of credit to because he didn't accept the order. He had more guts and balls than you because he said, I'm not going to send in the uniformed military to do something that I know in my gut isn't right. He was asked to shoot at their legs. He wrote that in his book. That's not hearsay. So your poo-pooing of this, it just shows you don't understand who we are as a country. who we are. And all of my colleagues across the aisle, especially the ones that served, should want an apolitical military and not want citizens to be scared of their own military. I love the military. I served alongside my whole life, so I'm worried about you tainting it. Have you given the order? Have you given the order that they can use lethal force against honor? I want the answer to be no. Please tell me it's no. Have you given the order?
Senator, I'd be careful what you read in books and believing it, except for the Bible.
Oh my God. So your former predecessor, I guess that's not enough for you. Okay, on Iran. I don't think there's a debate. There's like a cat fight going on in your own party about whether to go after Iran. Have you commissioned any day after planning? So any force protection, any use of ground troops in Iran, any cost assessments? Because I don't think we doubt what we can do as a country in the attack. It's the day after with Iraq and Afghanistan that so many of us have learned to be so deeply concerned about. Have you authorized day after planning?
As I've said, we have plans for everything, Senator.
Okay.
Senator Elissa Slotkin's exchange with Secretary Pete Hegseth cuts to the heart of a constitutional dilemma that the United States has deliberately tried to avoid for generations: the normalization of military power in domestic political life. Her questioning is not about tactical crowd control or isolated protest incidents, but about whether the executive branch is steadily dissolving the legal and ethical firewall between civilian law enforcement and the armed forces. That firewall exists for a reason, and history shows what happens when it erodes. The deployment of thousands of troops to Los Angeles without the consent of the governor marks a sharp break from modern precedent. Since 1965, administrations of both parties have treated such actions as extraordinary and dangerous, recognizing that the military's presence on American streets carries symbolic and practical consequences that extend far beyond immediate security concerns. Slotkin highlights that in previous cases cited by supporters of the deployment, federal troops were used to protect civil rights demonstrators, not to confront or intimidate them. That distinction matters because motive and posture define legitimacy. Throughout the exchange, Hegseth repeatedly refuses to provide clear, unambiguous answers to narrowly tailored questions. Whether uniformed military personnel have authority to detain civilians, whether cyber tools are being used to monitor protesters, and whether lethal force has been authorized are not theoretical concerns. They are foundational questions of democratic governance. A Secretary of Defense unwilling to state limits plainly signals either a lack of control or a willingness to preserve ambiguity for political flexibility, both of which are deeply troubling. Slotkin's invocation of former Secretary Mark Esper's account is especially revealing. Esper described refusing an order to deploy troops against protesters, including instructions to use gunfire. Whether or not Hegseth finds that account uncomfortable or inconvenient, it reflects a moment when institutional restraint prevailed because a leader recognized that legality alone does not equal legitimacy. Slotkin's argument is that leadership is measured not by obedience, but by the ability to recognize when an order violates the spirit of the Constitution. Hegseth's repeated effort to reframe protesters as inherently violent actors misses the point entirely. Civil disorder, even when criminal, does not automatically justify military involvement. The United States maintains professional, trained civilian law enforcement precisely to avoid placing soldiers in situations where they are asked to police fellow citizens. Once that line is crossed, even temporarily, it becomes easier to cross again under broader and more subjective definitions of threat. Equally concerning is the dismissive tone toward congressional oversight. Laughing at questions about lethal force, deflecting with sarcasm, and refusing direct answers undermines the principle of civilian accountability that the military itself is sworn to uphold. Oversight is not political theater. It is a constitutional obligation designed to prevent concentration of power in moments of crisis. Slotkin's warning is not alarmist. It is institutional. An apolitical military derives its strength from public trust, and that trust is fragile. When citizens see troops deployed in domestic political conflicts, especially without clear legal boundaries, the perception of neutrality erodes. Once that erosion begins, restoring confidence becomes exponentially harder. This hearing exposes a broader risk: the gradual redefinition of the military from a defender against foreign threats into a domestic enforcement tool. That shift does not happen overnight, but through incremental decisions justified as temporary, necessary, or symbolic. Slotkin's challenge forces a reckoning with that trajectory. If military force becomes a routine response to political unrest, the constitutional balance tilts decisively away from democratic restraint and toward executive dominance. That is the danger she is trying to stop before it becomes permanent.